In part 1, we learned about the rebel coalition of Elohim, gods with a little g, led by a main character, Lucifer, the covering cherub, the dragon that fell. Now we're going to explore the scene in Revelation 12, where in his wrath he spews out a flood from his mouth to destroy the woman, the believers in Christ, who keep the commandments of Yahweh in the place of safety that was prepared for her. First, with certainty, let's define the location of this place using the word as our guide. Number 1, while sitting in Jerusalem, Nathan speaks this prophetic statement to David in 2 Samuel chapter 7, verse 10. Moreover, I will appoint a place for my people Israel and will plant them, that they may dwell in a place of their own and move no more. Yah already knew that David's kingdom would split and that the northern kingdom would be dispersed among the nations. So he'd already prepared a place of safety and gathering for them from which they would, quote unquote, move no more. Obviously, this place is not the ancient Holy Land because they were going to be moved out of there. The amazing omniscience of Yah is put on display here. Did you know that this place was already set apart and received as a blessing for the northern kingdom by Jacob himself and conferred upon Joseph and his descendants in the book of Genesis? Watch how elegant this is. First, in Genesis 32:28, Jacob is given the new name Israel. Then, in Genesis 48:16, Israel places his name on Joseph's sons, Ephraim and Manasseh. Finally, in Genesis 49, the tribe of Joseph was blessed that they would be branches that run over the wall. In other words, they're leaving. They're going beyond the wall, beyond the original location. That they would be kept in strength by the shepherd, the stone of Israel. The shepherd, the stone, is Yeshua, Jesus. These are Christian believers who rely on or gain their strength from the Good Shepherd. They will be the future woman of Revelation 12. And we're reading this back in Genesis 49. And finally, in verse 26, Jacob reveals that he has received a blessing in addition to what was received by Abraham and Isaac, up to the bounds of the everlasting hills. John called this the place of safety that the woman flees to. Nathan called it the place where Israel, my people, the dispersed northern kingdom, would be planted. Jacob calls it the additional land blessing up to the bounds of the everlasting hills. Isaiah, in Isaiah 19, calls it Egypt, where in verse 19 an altar will be set in the midst of the land, and in verse 25, Egypt, my people, will be one of 3 groups of people who will worship Yah together there. So where is this land of refuge whose boundary is the everlasting hills? Clearly, it's the United States. Woven into the history of this nation have been wave after wave of Christians fleeing persecution and abuses for freedom and safety. And this gathering to the place of refuge is still happening as converts from Iran, Coptic Christians from Egypt, and persecuted Christians from parts of Africa and the Middle East seek refuge in America by the thousands each year. America is the place described by Ezekiel as being inhabited by people who were, number 1, brought back from the sword, meaning they escaped violence and destruction. Number 2, a people gathered from many nations. Number 3, a peaceful people dwelling in unwalled villages without bars or gates. And number 4, it's called the Mountains of Israel, a place that had long been desolate. First, I'm not denying the existence of the people that were here or excusing the injustices they suffered. I'm simply looking at sites like Cahokia near modern St. Louis, once a city larger than London at its peak. and they were abandoned centuries before Columbus arrived. The ancestral Puebloans behind extraordinary cliff dwellings across the Southwest and then vanished from them. The Hohokam built hundreds of miles of irrigation canals in Arizona, and then their society collapsed. These weren't isolated incidents. Archaeologists have identified multiple advanced civilizations that flourished and then disappeared, leaving the land in the condition Ezekiel describes, long desolate. And if we take into account the colossal buildings still in use from the world fairs, like the Griffin Museum of Science and Industry, that could have been here long before the U.S. was colonized, that is a very concrete example of desolation. This is clearly America. And there is one more piece to look at, the burial place of Gog. This will probably surprise you. First, in verse 1, Yahweh says, "Behold, I am against you, O Gog, the prince of Rosh, Meshech, and Tubal." Remember the divine council princes of Persia and Greece that fought Michael in the days of Daniel? I hope you see that this is one continuous story of Elohim, gods with a little g, who rebelled against the authority of Yahweh and his son. And that battle is being waged in heaven, the extreme north, and on earth. Now, looking back to verse 19 of Ezekiel, Yahweh tells us, "Surely in that day there shall be a great earthquake in the land of Israel." This earthquake is described in chapter 39, verse 11, as giving Gog a burial place there in Israel, in the valley of those who pass by east of the sea. It will obstruct travelers. So we're looking for a place with an inland salt sea in a valley of quote-unquote passers-by or passengers, where the passengers will pass by on the quote-unquote east of the sea. This sounds like the Great Salt Lake to me. Let's see if this fits the prophecy. Number 1, it is a valley in the mountains. Number 2, it has been a primary corridor for the east-west travel in the United States since the Transcontinental Railroad and the east-west telegraph system were joined there at Promontory Summit on the northeast point of the Salt Lake on May 10, 1869. The railroad ran up the east side of the lake, and today Interstate Highway 15 runs that same course up the east side of the lake. Number 4, there is a major fault line that runs up that same corridor from the middle of Utah for 240 miles into southern Idaho. Roughly 80% of Utah's population lives on this fault. And it is the main reason given for the extensive foundation work on the LDS temple that will reopen in the spring of 2027. Yes, it matches every point. A valley passage where, when a great earthquake occurs, will stop the travelers that are traversing on the east side of an inland sea. Thank you for watching. In the next video, we will explore what this invading army of the Gog coalition will look like and see if perhaps it's already underway. Until then, may Yah bless and keep you and make his face to shine upon you and give you peace. Shalom.